Hey, brother.
Hey, Al. How's it going?
Great. How are you?
I'm great. Doing
Glad to hear it.
awesome.
Good, good. We're glad to be here once again. Welcome everyone back to another episode of Siblings in Crime. I'm Allie Rossell,
And I'm Blake Murphy.
and just as it sounds, we're siblings who love true crime.
Yes.
Always have, always will. We tried to watch a scary movie last night. Didn't find anything good.
Shoot.
Go find a hat. So if you have any recommendations, we need a scary movie.
Yes.
And we'll be right back after a moment with Blake getting a hat. Welcome back. Looks great.
Thank you.
All right, before we get into our case, how was your week?
My week was great.
Good.
I was on reserve for Monday, I think, here in Arizona.
I get it all confused. I'm not sure.
Me too. But I'm going to Des Moines tomorrow, or tonight.
Very confused.
So one of the highlights of my week was I changed the doorknobs out at our Airbnb. So it felt handy and everything. It was pretty cool.
I think the only other time I've seen you do anything handy was put those chairs together, and they were like put together so crappy.
Yeah,
I think they
a
broke.
screw just came out yesterday.
Oh, really? Yesterday? Yeah. That's not one skill that you really obtained all that much, but
Yeah, but I'm building it.
I'm proud of you.
I'm building it though.
So you got a doorknob, and that's huge.
Two doorknobs.
Two doorknobs.
Yep.
At an Airbnb. Mm-hmm. So look for that Airbnb. Rent from Blake. Where is it
Yep.
located?
Phoenix.
Phoenix. If you're staying in the Phoenix area,
Yeah.
you know who to call. Very nice. I would say my highlight this week. Wait, do you have anything else?
No.
I like it. My highlight, I also been on just sitting on reserve. So I had today off, which is nice. I think that the only thing I really have going on is I've been just still running. I would say
Nice.
that. I was thinking about, I would need your feedback, thinking about starting a Be Hard to Kill TikTok. But
Sure.
I'm shy. So I would post a lot of Team Tim content and my own marathon training, but I'm not sure if I will do that or not yet.
You should.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it'll help me be motivated.
Yeah.
having to post
Be
my
super
runs.
motivated. Then.
I just really need motivation.
Yeah, you need attention.
So, no.
Also, low light.
What?
Drove almost all the way to Phoenix trying to pick up Allie from the airport the other
Oh
day.
my gosh. I literally, Blake texts me and goes, what terminal? And I was flying into Mesa. And I go, oh no. So I call him right away. He's like, you didn't tell me. We both go immediately back to our text. And I had said noon at Mesa. So
Like 4 days before.
not my fault though. I told you.
For like 4 days before.
Well, thank you for getting me regardless.
Yep.
Anyways, are you ready to jump into our case today?
Yes.
So I haven't told you yet this case, which is kind of fun for me because then you just don't know what to expect. But we're going to start in Cape Cod. And so the dunes of Cape Cod are quiet, but they keep their secrets well. In the summer of 1974, a woman's body was discovered just beyond the tree line. Her skull crushed, her hands missing, and pine needles carefully placed where her head should have been. No one knew her name, no one reported her missing, and whoever had left her there had vanished without a trace. For years she remained a mystery, a ghost among the dunes. Little did they know the truth of this cold case lay waiting for half a century just beyond their reach. So this is the story of the Lady of the Dunes.
Ooh.
Spooky.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yep. I have one thing to say.
Tell me.
This person who killed her must know what he's doing.
Why
Because
you
he cut
say?
her hands off.
Yeah, we're going to go into that. That's the creepiest thing when people try not to leave identity like
Yeah.
that.
Like when they do their teeth in their hands so you can't identify them.
Smart.
Anyways, keep
Unfortunately, smart.
going. Yeah.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Let's roll. All right, the sun hung high over Provincetown, Massachusetts in July of 1974. Its golden rays danced across the sand dunes of Race Point Beach. The salty ocean breeze carried the laughter of vacationers, the rhythmic crashing of waves blending with the distant calls of seagulls. It was the kind of summer day that seemed timeless until a gruesome discovery shattered their tranquility. A 12-year-old girl, so sad, 12 years old, wandering through the dunes with her dog, stumbled upon something half buried in the sand. At first look, it just looked like a pile of clothing, perhaps left behind by a careless sunbather. But as she stepped closer, dread slithered up her spine. There, lying on her side, was a decomposing body of a woman.
Ew.
The sight was terrifying. And I think if this is the case, I remember she thought it was like some animal at first. It wasn't until her parents came over and were like, whoa, we're getting out of here. And so like
You just tell her it's an animal still.
yeah,
Oh,
that
yeah,
was a
it's an
weird
animal.
deer.
Let's go.
Yeah, hurry along. But you can just tell that the body must have been very far in the decomposing stage if it could have been mistaken for a different thing. The sight was obviously horrifying. The woman's head had nearly been severed from her body, her skull crushed by a brutal blow. Her hands were missing, like you said, cleanly removed, as if someone had deliberately erased her identity. So it has to be some type of person to think that far in advance.
Or someone that likes true crime.
That's true. You know, I think about that probably too much.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I feel like if you listen to true crime, you could probably pull off a pretty good crime. You know what they're looking for. I don't mean to go too far down this route. I know. I was listening to a podcast this morning, and they're talking about how, like, the murderer shot somebody, like, picked up the bullet, whatever casings. I'm like, you got to use a revolver. They eat up their casings. And I'm like, wait, I'm actually, I shouldn't think like that. But it is interesting, like, are they just really smart, or are they just, did they study up in advance? Mm-hmm. That was a dark term coming back. But her jeans were folded, actually, neatly beside her, with a blue bandana tucked within them. A beach towel lay beneath her body as though she had been placed there carefully, almost tenderly. So clothes are folded. Everything is neat besides her body.
That's the creepy part, too.
I don't know why would, like...
Sounds like a spy was, like, executed, and they just left their stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. I can see that. Her hair, auburn and sun-bleached, was tied back in a ponytail. Her nails were painted a pale pink, a delicate detail that stood in stark contrast to the horror of her injuries. When police arrived, they noted the absence of any immediate signs of a struggle. There were no drag marks, no blood-soaked sand. It was as if she had simply appeared there lifeless, waiting to be found. The medical examiner estimated that she had been dead for probably up to 3 weeks, if not a little longer. So she'd been there for quite some time, which is also kind of shocking because it seems like a pretty popular beach, a pretty good vacation spot. So she must have been just perfectly in the right area to not be searched.
Yeah.
Her body was surprisingly pretty preserved considering it was the warm summer air. She was between 25 and 40 years old and around 5 foot.
It's a big range.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like they had too much we're in the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
She was 5'6" tall with an athletic build, but beyond those details, she was basically just a ghost.
Yeah. Sounds like a spy to me.
I like the route you're going. No missing persons reports matched her description. There were no fingerprints, obviously, that could be taken. And with her hands gone and her face unrecognizable due to decomposition, identifying her seemed basically impossible. This case baffled authorities because obviously who was this woman and why had someone gone to such length to ensure that she remained anonymous? With no name, no witnesses, and no immediate suspects, the media gave her one of the most haunting names in American crime history, the Lady of the Dunes. Early in the investigation was obviously tough because they had really nothing to run with. They had no idea who this woman is, and they kind of used that to their advantage in terms of helping the people in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, feel more comfort, being like, oh, this must have been not locals. Yeah. Well, yeah, targeted, like a specific person. It wasn't like someone's going on a rampage. It's not like they're probably a local. And so they really tries to ease the tension in Massachusetts by saying, like, we don't know this person, so probably is not our people. And it worked to an extent. They started to feel a little bit better. Like, they repeatedly looked through missing reports, and nothing led to any solid leads. Forensic efforts were also so limited in technology and stuff during this time. So investigators had dental impressions, compare them to national databases, but no matches were found. As years passed, forensic artists created multiple reconstructions of her face, hoping someone would recognize her. And so they, without like the technology of computers and stuff, they were actually doing like clay molds back in the day.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah, I'm like, I feel like that's, imagine too, if that was like your missing love person, and you like notice because you're like they're clay sculpture. Ew, I feel like that would creep me out so bad. Like, that looks like my person or whatever. So I hate that, but I mean, I'm glad they're getting creative, trying to find who this missing person is.
Kind of crazy they don't have any dental records.
Yeah, that's also really weird. And I'm wondering also if a factor would be if they didn't have as good of a database back then with dental records, if it was harder to get like any DNA or anything like that off of dental. So
yeah, or maybe it wasn't like people didn't go to the dentist and get their braces and stuff as much.
True, they didn't have regular.
Yeah, so
they weren't like you. You had your braces,
braces, Invisalign braces.
Yeah, you have a big dental history.
Mm-hmm. I'd be found.
You'd be found. That's what I say. You'd be easily found. No worries there. Yeah, so they were using like clay sculptures and making like and it was like based off her skull structures. So like even then, like they didn't know what her face looked like. So they're just like doing their best, which obviously your best sometimes is not the most accurate.
Yeah.
Well, later as technology improved, forensic artists created digital renderings of her face to distribute to the public, which is still creepy to me, but I guess they're getting a little closer. These reconstructions were updated over time as new forensic techniques refined her estimated features. Some theories emerged that she was a victim of a mob violence, like spies, that kind of stuff, because who doesn't know?
Spies and mob?
Separate. These are separate conspiracies. Yeah. Because she's unknown, so they're like, okay, mob, spies, unidentified hitchhiker potentially, or even, believe it or not, an extra in the film Jaws, which they had been shooting nearby that summer.
What does that mean?
She was an extra in the movie.
And died?
No, I don't think they think she died from the movie. I think they thought they recognized like her reconstructed image, but like, oh, she was like an extra in that movie Jaws.
Like she's not from here. She just came here for the movie.
Yeah, she came here for the movie.
I was like, well, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, like dies on the scene.
They're like, it's like, oh yeah, this is one of the people that got eaten. That actually were eaten.
That'd be horrible. Yeah, so a lot of people were thinking like maybe she was in town for that, and like they thought that they may have seen her around during that time. So there was like all the speculation, but nothing could be confirmed. Investigators chased obviously every lead they could, and they never stopped checking those records of missing women that matched her descriptions. They interviewed locals, of course, and even exhumed the body decades later to extract DNA. So this is becoming a decade-long cold case.
Dang.
Every time I hear about people exhuming bodies, I'm like, that would be a horrible job.
Yeah.
That sounds so scary. And I'm also shocked. This might be a really dumb thing to say. I'm also shocked exhuming the bodies, like they have usable DNA.
Why?
I don't know. It's just like you don't have like anything in like you're like bones. I thought at that point. Like, I guess bones have DNA.
You might have still flesh and stuff, and yeah, bones have probably DNA. I don't know.
I guess I just don't know enough about DNA. We've been having this struggle since episode 1.
You don't know much about DNA.
No, I don't know anything. I'm just a girl.
Yeah. You're just a true crime girl.
I'm just a true crime girl who doesn't know anything about true crime. So without a name, their work remained frustratingly stagnant. And just like that, this became the Massachusetts longest cold case. So all these rumors.
That's
no
it.
names.
That's the end.
Thanks for coming in today. No, but this is actually one of the cold cases that finally warmed up after 50 years.
Oh, wow.
And so we're going to fast forward a bit.
When was this again? 1970? Mm-hmm. So right now?
Yeah.
Wow.
You thought you were going to catch me off guard with the numbers, huh? Jerk. So for nearly 50 years, the Lady of the Dunes remained...
What was that last time? What happened?
The calculations?
No, I think it was the phone or something.
What? We're talking about like if people had credit cards.
Yeah, credit card in 1950, and you're like...
I know. I don't know so much about... Like, all right, we could have had computers in like 1920. I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyways, so for nearly 50 years, the Lady of the Dunes remained nameless. She became a phantom in Provincetown lore, inspiring speculations, theories, and even urban legends. But the truth was far more tragic. So like I said, we're fast forwarding. We're actually going to start in Christmas of 2017. So not too long ago. When a man named Richard Hanchett, living states away over in Waterford, Michigan, received a Christmas... I was waiting for you to say that. We're Ohio State fans. Received a Christmas gift from her fiance that would heat this cold case right up for the first time ever since the gruesome discovery. Growing up in a loving environment, Richard Jr. was unaware of the complexities surrounding his birth. His parents provided a stable home, full of safety, joy, and a childhood that really sounds like the most picture-perfect fairy tale. Like, everything was smooth. Great, stable home. Although appreciative, as he aged and matured, and especially after the death of those who raised him, curiosity grew of his true origins. In 2018, driven by a desire to uncover his heritage, Richard unboxed his 2017 Christmas present and submitted a DNA test, hoping to connect with any living relatives. The results led him to the Terry family in Whitwell, Tennessee. Through them, Richard learned about his biological mother, and slowly the puzzle pieces began to come together.
Right, so he did a 23andMe, figured out that his family's from Tennessee, and that his mom is the Dune lady.
And that his mom could be the Dune lady.
No way. That was a guess.
In 1958, Ruth Marie Terry gave birth to a son, Richard, in Livonia, Michigan. Facing financial hardship, she made the heart-wrenching decision to entrust her infant to the care of her workplace superintendent at the Fisher Body Automotive Plant. I feel like every case ever, they're working at an automotive place of some sorts.
I feel like I only know two.
Well, the last two I feel like we did as of recently.
Yeah.
Richard Hanchett Sr., who, along with his wife, adopted the boy and raised him as their own. So we have Ruth, has a son. Instead of putting it up for adoption, really just gives her son to another couple. And they take the son in and raise him as their own. And that's Richard. The new family additions filled Richard Jr. in on Ruth's disappearance and the family's decades-long uncertainty regarding her fate. This revelation was bittersweet. While he was happy that he found his biological relatives, the mystery of his mother's whereabouts remained unsolved. In October 2022, so now we're 4 years later from when he originally did his DNA test, he went to Tennessee right away with his fiance. They went and actually seems like to have a great relationship with the remaining family. But now 4 years later...
So he found his biological something.
Aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers.
Not the family that adopted him. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
Oh, yeah. The family that his adoptive parents, they both passed away.
Okay. They're the ones in Michigan? Okay.
Yeah, so they're in Michigan. The biological is like the rest of the family that's in Tennessee. So they went out to visit, and sounds like they have great relationships. But they did tell him, like, yeah, we don't know where your mom is actually. Like, she's been missing for a long time. And so now we're in October of 2022, and this is when Richard received a call from the FBI that would, of course, change his life and the rest of the family. They informed him that through forensic genealogy, they had identified the Lady of the Dunes, a murder victim from 1974, as his mother, Ruth Marie Terry. The news was a profound mix of sorrow and closure. Richard had spent many years yearning to meet his mother, only to discover she had been tragically taken from the world long, long ago. Determined to honor her memory, Richard embarked on a journey to Provincetown, Massachusetts, where his mother's remains had been discovered decades earlier. Accompanied by members of the Terry family, he scattered some of Ruth's ashes in the dunes, ensuring that she would forever rest in the place where her life had been unjustly ended. This act symbolized a tender reunion between mother and son, bridging the gap created by time and tragedy. Which is kind of surprising to me. I'm like, I feel like, I don't know why, I'm like, putting ashes back at her murder site seems surprising.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just like closure for them.
That'd be a weird feeling. It's like, this person I never knew was my mom and she died.
Yeah.
Murdered.
And like, I was reading some of things, like some of Richard's interviews and stuff, and he made it sound like he really, not that he had like spite against his mom, but he had such a great relationship with his adoptive parents that he didn't really feel the need to ever find her until they passed away, and he was still looking for more like family. So he was like 60 years old at this point.
Oh, wow.
So he is.
I was thinking like a 25-year-old
Yeah,
guy.
no, he's old. I mean,
Yeah.
his mom was passed away in 74, and so now we're in the 20s. In
Oh,
2020.
yeah, true.
So it's like he's old, and he's like all of a sudden looking for family. So this is like long beyond like his whole life, basically. So he's lived his whole life not knowing. So that's got to be such a weird feeling. Like you feel connected to family all of a sudden, yet you never have the reassurance to, or the reunited. Reunion, thank you. The reunion with your mom. To further commemorate, I can never say that. Commemorate, thank you. Commemorate. I was like, how come I can write words and I can't say them? Ruth's life, Richard initiated a GoFundMe campaign to raise funds for memorial services and a headstone in both Provincetown and Whitwell. His efforts aimed to provide his mother with the recognition and dignity she deserved, transforming her narrative from that of an unidentified victim to a cherished individual with a loving family. So they're finally able to give her like a proper burial and like a memorial. Okay, so going back to who Ruth was. She was born in Tennessee on September 8th, 1936. Ruth had spent her life moving between Michigan, Massachusetts, and California. She was known to her family as a kind, independent, and very adventurous. But in the months leading up to her death, she had made a life-altering decision, one that may have sealed her fate. 6 months before her murder, Ruth had married a man named Guy Rockwell Muldavin in Reno, Nevada. We hate Nevada. He was charming, well-spoken, and had an air of sophistication. To outsiders, the relationship seemed like a whirlwind of romance, but those who knew Ruth noticed that something was unsettling. After her marriage, Ruth and Guy went on their honeymoon, and Ruth is the only one that did not return home from the honeymoon.
Oh.
So this is when Ruth disappeared. She stopped communicating with her family, who became increasingly worried, and when they reached out to Guy, his responses were vague, invasive, and then the worst realization settled in that Ruth was gone and no one knew where she was. And this was like a weird time because I feel like as family, I'd be like all up on Guy, like, where the heck is she? Yeah. And Guy was like, oh, she kind of ran off, like nonchalant. But they didn't have anything, like any evidence-wise to be like, you did something. They didn't even know where they were on their honeymoon. Like, they didn't know like what they've been up to. Yeah.
And you can't just like text them and like call and be like, there's not answering. Right. Like, you must do something. It could be like, I don't know where to send my letter, so I can't really know if she's alive or dead or if she just ran away.
Yeah, so hard to find. It's not like there's social media where we can like Facebook stalk them to see where they're at.
Yeah.
And also at this time, like, okay, you go to the police and say you have a missing person case, but they're like, she just got married. She may have ran off.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing to point to foul play, I guess.
Yep.
Yes. So it's so scary for them. Her family searched, but the truth was buried beneath decades of silence. They had no way of knowing that Ruth, the sister and friend they had loved, had been lying nameless in a Massachusetts dune for nearly half a century. Eyes turned to Guy, like we said, but there was no evidence, and so they could only really speculate. If the family would have known his past, I'm sure that they could have done a little bit more, because really all they knew about him was like him and Ruth are getting married and they seem really happy. But as they started to dig into Guy's history, they're like, maybe there could have been more probable cause to look into this guy as a suspect. So born on October 27th, 1923 in New York City, Guy Rockwell Muldavin was adopted by Albert and Sylvia Silverblatt. His upbringing was marked by travel and comfort alongside his brother Michael and sister Joan. So Guy, he led a life, basically, he kind of faked his way through everything. He was like the charmer type, but he had an obvious dark side. And his early years were comfortable, but his adult life unfolded into like many disturbing events. So there's a lot to unpack. Stay with me. We're going to start with his just marital life.
Okay.
So his first marriage happened in 1946. Guy married Jolene May Loop in Pennsylvania. They lived in various states, including New York and California, before divorcing in 1956, just a decade later. So that's wife number one. Nothing too fishy there. His second marriage, 1958, so 2 years after his previous divorce, he married a woman that went by Manzi Ryan in Idaho. And Manzi had her own daughter named Dolores from a previous relationship. However, what's weird about this is that both Manzi and Dolores vanished in Seattle in 1960, just 2 years after they got married.
Oh.
Guy became, of course, the primary suspect, but he...
And there's a suitcase found. I'm sorry. I'm just...
That's literally the show we watched last night. He's getting confused. You back with me? Pay attention.
All right. Keep going.
So he immediately dipped out of Seattle. He was trying to avoid being interrogated and stuff. But it later led to being arrested by an FBI agent for unlawful flight. However, that didn't last long. He was arrested but not held or anything. And so because they didn't have any evidence persecuting him, to persecute him, he was set to go about. And only 2 years later, he got married to his third wife.
Disappeared.
So now we're on marriage number 3. Shortly after he married Evelyn in Washington, around this time, he actually faced larceny charges for swindling her family out of $10,000. So he married him, and it sounds like he borrowed $10,000 from her mom and dipped the entire family right after, wife and all.
That's called larceny?
Yeah, because they just stealing money. He was convicted in 1961, the next year, for this larceny act. His sentence, though, was suspended the following year in 1962 on the condition he repaid the money. So all he had to do was repay, and then he was fine.
Yeah.
So he really has, but originally he was charged 15 years, and then the judge is nah, just pay him back, and he just paid him back. So he's been kind of dodging the law this whole time, and he just seems suspicious.
Yeah.
Having many wives obviously doesn't make you a murderer, and it just seems fishy the way he treated his wives.
Especially if two people went missing.
Right. His previous wife and daughter that he never looked for.
Yeah.
Or her daughter. So suspicion surrounded these previous relationships. It kind of just showed that he had potentially a darker side. But a true crime writer, Anne Rule is her name, devoted a section of her 2007 book, Smoke, Mirrors, and Murder, to Guy in connection with the Ryan Mearns disappearance. Ryan Mearns being, Ryan is the wife that went missing, and her daughter's last name was Mearns. So it's Manzi actually, and the daughter Dolores. So in this book, she has a whole chapter dedicated to I think Guy is actually the reason for this disappearance. With an extensive discussion of police efforts to connect Guy with the crime, she kind of just dove into it. Investigators found dismembered human body parts in Guy's septic tank, but were unable to prove that they were either of the missing women.
Jeez.
According to...
the person must have fell in there.
Yeah, well, they just didn't know for sure if it was the wife or daughter. They weren't able to...
Yeah, but if you find someone dismembered, you'd probably be all right, we got
First
to check
guess,
you for something.
Especially the owner is the husband of the missing woman. Right. So according to this book, Guy had never been charged in connection, and as the King County prosecutor was reluctant to do so without a body, which I'm there is a body, but because they couldn't identify it as the missing bodies, nothing ever happened of it. I'm kid, this guy's just scraping by. He's getting lucky left and right. On top of all this, Guy is also the prime suspect in a murder of Henry, who goes by Red, a 28-year-old bread truck driver, and the disappearance of his girlfriend, Barbara Jo Kelly, a 17-year-old waitress. In June of 1950, they were found with Red. Red's body was discovered face down on the beach near Table Bluff the following morning, and he was shot in the back of the head. Except for his shoes and socks, he was completely naked. Barbara, the girlfriend, her personal clothing was also found carefully folded.
Ring a bell.
Mm-hmm.
Rings a bell.
And
Not ring a bell.
Rings a bell. So her clothes were carefully folded and tucked underneath the rest of his clothes, with the exception of her shoes and stockings. But there was no trace of Barbara herself that could be found. And so they assumed that the boyfriend was killed and the girlfriend was kidnapped, but they could never ever find the girlfriend.
Jeez.
I'm not sure what led to bringing Guy to be the primary suspect, but this is just like highlighting what's been following him over the history of his time.
He's a serial killer.
Right. So he's been in Dodge for a couple of years.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, sounds like it. He's been in Dodge for years and had yet to be accountable for any of these crimes. And one thing that really stood out to investigators as they were diving into Guy to find out if he potentially killed Ruth, the Lady of the Dunes. This is such an interesting thing. He actually published some literature in 1976, 2 years after Ruth Marie Terry's murder. Guy published this book called Cooking with Rump Oil. Okay, so it sounds like a cookbook. It's not. I was like, oh. So it was disguised as a cookbook, though, and it contained unsettling content. One so-called recipe called Cape Cod shid.
Whoa.
So we know she died in Cape Cod. And this is kind of like, according to the FBI, they think it eerily mirrors the murder scene. This is what it says. Quote, after the shid is caught... Oh, also, I should tell you, the shid, like, the whole thing is about, like, misbelief animals. So shid is, like, a fake animal in this recipe.
This guy's weird.
Yeah, kind of messed up in the brain.
Yeah. Why do murderers do this stuff sometimes?
Also, I'm like, you're just, like, putting stuff out there for you to get caught.
Yeah, that's what they do all the time.
I feel like it's got to be, like, narcissists that they have to, like, let people know that they're doing stuff in a weird way. Okay, so, quote, after the shit is caught, anything over 5 minutes ends it. The sweet turpentine taste will turn to that of a burnt glove, and the tender look will become one of despair. End quote. To me, I'm like, that means nothing.
Yeah, same.
I don't understand anything. However, retired FBI profiler Julia Cowley interpreted this as a disguised reference to Terry's murder, noting the emphasis on the victim's hair, which she was known for, and the transformation from tenderness, like of a wife, to despair, possibly reflecting the moment Terry realized her impending fate. So it seemed like a lot of coincidences for the FBI. Unfortunately, despite this disturbing trail Guy left behind him throughout the country, he was never charged for his actions. He had moved to California around 1976, and according to a feature article written about him in 1985, he had retired from his job as an executive vice president of Silverstone on Radio Drive in Beverly Hills. And he also worked in a tobacco shop in Carmel. So he was just living his life this whole time in California. Yeah. And he had passed away in 2002. So his obituary says that he was born in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he died of a lengthy illness in California, March 14, 2002. And he was survived by his wife, Phyllis, and his sister, Joan. So he had married one more time that we know of. And so although legal actions
That girl didn't die?
Evidently not. I'm like, you lie, Phyllis? Although legal actions could not take place because he passed away 20 years before this DNA came out, on August 28th, 2023, so very recent, authorities officially named Guy as the murderer of Ruth Marie Terry. This conclusion was drawn from the combination of factors: his tumultuous marital history, the mysterious disappearance of his previous wife and stepdaughter, and the disturbing content of his writings. These elements painted a portrait of a man with a violent and deceitful side, ultimately leading investigators to close the case on the Lady of the Dunes mystery.
Dang.
So for decades, Provincetown held a silent vigil for the Lady of the Dunes. Tourists and locals alike would visit her burial site, leaving flowers for the woman without a name. Then after nearly 50 years, when she was given back her identity, in November 2022, they had announced to the family that they had found her. And Provincetown was able to finally take a breath of relief. Like, oh, we finally know who this woman is. We've been like, not worshiping, but remembering her, this random woman. And so they're able to finally find resolution. Still, the question remains, obviously, why did he kill her? Was it premeditated, or did something push him over the edge? So we may never know, like, the entire truth. But what we do know is that Ruth Marie Terry was not just a victim. She was a woman with a past, a life, and a family that loved her. And though it took decades, she was finally returned to them, not as the Lady of the Dunes, but as Ruth, A name reclaimed and a ghost laid to rest.
Dang, that was wild.
That is this week's story.
I was thinking, like, I wonder what else is in that recipe book. Like,
My monster just sprayed on my face. No, that's a good point. I actually
like-
didn't even think about that.
yeah, it's like, oh, the Shroud or whatever of New York. It's
Yeah,
like, who is this
seriously.
person about?
Yeah, I
Who'd
wonder
you kill there?
if they dove more into that, because if that's just like his personal
Seattle.
journal and some his like weird journal of things he's done in the past or something, I bet they could unveil a lot more.
He's like the tokens taken, and
Yeah.
we're 10,000 tokens taken.
And the FBI is like, I know exactly who that is. We're like, what does that mean? Anyways, very interesting. I'm so glad, because I sometimes get so pissed about cold cases because I just want answers so bad.
Yeah.
So
Good,
how
that one's-
incredible.
That one's solved
Exactly.
for the most part.
Yeah. Completely solved, I would say.
Yeah.
They closed the case. They found the family. And
Yes.
I'll post pictures of Richard with his biological siblings. So it's cool.
Sweet.
It's sad, but it's happy in terms of everyone feels peace now.
Yeah. True. But he didn't get justice.
Didn't get justice, unfortunately. Can you imagine? I hate stories like that. They live their whole lives like under the radar.
Yeah.
Full lives. Anyways, for
Yeah.
this week, do you have a trivia for me?
Oh no.
You're joking.
Oh no, it's still there.
Oh my gosh. I was like, I give you one thing to do.
All right. So this trivia, we're gonna talk about 3 different serial killers,
Okay.
and I'm gonna give you, like, you're gonna guess how many kills they've had.
Oh my
they've
gosh.
done. This
Okay.
kind of sounds bad, but I'm gonna give you A, B, and C, and you're gonna guess. Okay.
Okay.
And then the answer will come at the end.
Okay.
All right. So A.
Who are you talking about?
I didn't mean to say A. I meant to say 1. All right. So Jeffrey Dahmer
Oh, okay.
was an infamous serial killer between 1978 and 1991, killing men and boys.
Right.
Do you think it was A, 17,
Okay.
B, 25, or C, 6?
I never watched a documentary, so I actually don't know much about his case, but I thought it was on the higher end. 24 seems really high. I'll do 17.
Okay. And then next is Ted Bundy. He confessed to killing a certain amount of women across several states in the 1970s through the, but the true number may be higher than this. So A, 14,
Okay.
B, 30.
Are you making up these numbers?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a right number.
Okay.
And C, 26.
I'll say 26.
Okay.
I think it was pretty high. Could have been higher. But.
All right. And then the last is the Green River Killer. Gary Ridgway was convicted
He
of
killed the most.
how many murders? Making him the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history that we know of.
That's scary.
A, 25, B, 42, or C, 46. 49. Sorry.
49 is my final answer.
All right, so we'll go back to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah. What was his number?
The answer was A, 17 men and boys.
I said 17.
Yep.
Yay!
Ted Bundy was B, and it was 30 women.
30.
Could be
Dang.
more.
I got that one wrong.
Yep.
That's so many. I didn't realize.
And then Gary Ridgway with 49 murders. The most prolific serial killer in U.S.
I
history.
hate that so much.
Yes.
That is interesting. That's so sad.
Yes.
Glad they're all caught.
Me too.
But that was a fun one. Good
Yeah.
idea. That was good.
Yeah. I messed up the last one. I was trying to get you.
You got me.
But I right when I was saying C, I was like, this is the right answer. And then I'm like, shoot, I can't remember it. But if I look down, Allie's going to know.
And then you say the wrong number. Anyways.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, anyways, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Siblings in Crime. We'll be back next week.
Yep. We'll be back. Thank you.